I know for years you've resisted the idea of American weapons being used for any sort of direct strike inside Russia. But we did witness this shift in recent days, authorizing American weapons for limited direct strikes. Are American weapons being used right now inside Russia?
They're authorized to be used in proximity to the border. We're not authorizing strikes 200 miles into Russia. We're not authorizing strikes on Moscow, on the Kremlin.
This is my video update on this Thursday midday, June the 6th. Let's talk about some news. And we have some good news from Slovakia. Robert Fico is back. He is back, and he put out a video statement yesterday saying that he will return to his duties as Prime Minister of Slovakia at the end of June, early July. Excellent news from Slovakia. Fico, in this video statement, he said that he has forgiven the man that tried to assassinate him, but he also said that this man was nothing more than a messenger, and there are darker forces behind this man, opposition forces, forces outside Slovakia that are very unhappy with his government and his government's independent path. That is what Fico said in his video statement. But good news that Fico will be returning to office at the end of June, early July. Let's now go to St. Petersburg, where the Russian president was speaking to big mainstream media reporters on the sidelines of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And Putin said so many interesting things as he was answering questions from reporters. And let's go through some of Putin's statements. Putin said that he received a letter from Joe Biden. I thought that was an interesting statement from the Russian president. A letter from Biden regarding the Ukraine crisis. And Putin replied, if you want to stop the hostilities in Ukraine, stop supplying the weapons. Then in 2 to 3 months, everything will be over. That's an interesting piece of information that the Biden White House sent a letter to the Russian president. Very interesting. Putin said that the U.S. is not interested in Ukraine. Ukraine interests no one in the U.S. Putin said Washington is not fighting for Ukraine or the Ukraine people. They are fighting for their own grandeur and global leadership. According to Putin, the current administration is not so much interested in helping Kiev prevail in the ongoing standoff, but is rather determined to prevent any Russian success precisely because they believe it would damage U.S. leadership. Yeah, absolutely. This conflict started out as a way to regime change Russia, and it has now gotten to the point where the collective West, the United States, the neocons, NATO, they are very worried about the damage this will do to their rep if they are defeated by Russia. And to the business of NATO, the invincible NATO defeated by Russia. They're very worried about that. Never really was about Ukraine, was it? It was all about regime change in Russia. What else did Putin say? He was asked about whether a Trump presidency can end the conflict. Asked how a Trump victory in November might affect U.S. policy in Ukraine, Putin said it would depend on whether the new administration prioritizes the interests of its own people rather than the destructive forces of global liberalism. If they are guided by national interests, then there may be some changes in foreign policy in relation to Russia and in relation to the conflict in Ukraine, Putin said. Yeah, if a Trump administration is serious about America first, then they will stop this nonsense in Ukraine. That simple. Putin was also asked about whether he prefers a Trump presidency or a Biden presidency. He's answered this question in the past, but he answered it again. We believe no serious changes will happen after the elections, the Russian leader explained in a response to a question from Reuters. Putin reminded reporters that he had already commented on this issue, describing the incumbent U.S. President Joe Biden as an old school politician and more predictable than his predecessor and challenger, Donald Trump. Everyone took my statement about Biden as some kind of a joke at his expense, Putin noted, adding that the American president's reaction to attack and insult the Russian leader just proved his point that Biden was predictable. I love this answer. Basically, Putin is saying, yeah, I was trolling Biden back when I was asked this question the first time around, whether I prefer Biden or Trump. And I said that Biden is more predictable. That's what Putin said. Biden is an old school politician and he's more predictable. And then Biden went crazy. Biden lost his marbles. And that was exactly what Putin expected Biden to do. He's predictable, exactly. I was trolling him, and sure enough, he lost his mind and started calling me a thug and a dictator and whatever, and that just proves my point. Biden is predictable. So let's talk about a statement that Putin made, which I believe was the most important statement that he made to the questions from the media. And that has to do with the long-range missiles or possible long-range missiles being used to hit Russian territory and how Russia might retaliate to permission given to the Ukraine military to hit pre-2014 Russian territory. Russia will respond by boosting air defenses and destroying these missiles, Putin said. Secondly, if someone deems it possible to supply such weapons to the war zone, to strike our territory, why shouldn't we supply similar weapons to those regions of the world where they will be used against sensitive sites of these countries? The Russian president added. We can respond asymmetrically. We will give it a thought. If the West continues to escalate, such actions will completely destroy international relations and undermine international security, Putin noted. If we see that these countries are being drawn into a war against us, and this is their direct participation in the war against Russia, then we reserve the right to act in a similar way. This is a recipe for very serious problems, he warned. So Putin, in his statement, he once again said that while Ukraine, it'll be the Ukraine military that's going to be attacking Russian territory, we know that it's the United States and the collective West that will be providing the surveillance, the targeting, the satellite information, all of this stuff. So he once again said, let's not kid ourselves. We know that if we are hit with long-range missiles, it is the work of the collective West and of the United States. So he also said that. I think that was the most important statement from Putin from yesterday. Putin also talked about Gonzalo Lira. He was asked about whether Russia would help in the investigation of a French reporter who was killed in, I believe it was Bakhmut, but I'm not, it was either Bakhmut or Avdiivka. A French reporter was killed. And he was asked by a reporter at this event if Russia would help with the investigation as to what happened to this French reporter. And Putin said pretty much, yeah, absolutely, we will help in the investigation. And he contrasted that with Russia helping in the investigation of the death of this journalist. He contrasted that with how the United States has not helped at all, has not been at all interested in the death of Gonzalo Lira. Putin said they tortured an American journalist to death in a Ukrainian prison, and the U.S. is not even asking what happened to him. Putin said no one went to the trouble of asking what actually happened. True. Very true. Not one statement from Biden. Not one statement from the State Department saying they are going to open up an investigation, from the U.S. Embassy in Kiev saying that they are going to open up an investigation. Nothing. And Putin said in his statement about Gonzalo Lira, he said it many times, he's an American citizen, and they simply do not care. They simply don't care. By the way, there was a couple of days ago, there was a report from I believe it's a Ukrainian media outlet, Strana, which is a fairly reputable Ukraine media outlet, like a reputable Ukraine media outlet. And they documented the prison abuse in Kharkov. And they actually had video of how prisoners are beaten in Kharkov, and how prisoners are extorted. They shake them down for money. Other prisoners and guards and other officials shake them down for money. And if they don't have money, then they're abused and beaten. Which to me, and this report came out a couple of days ago, and the video is on social media. You can look for it on Twitter or Telegram. And this report from Strana confirms Gonzalo's last videos that he made, the 3 videos that he made when he was at the border of Ukraine and Hungary. Anyway, rest in peace, Gonzalo. Rest in peace. So the Russian president talked about Gonzalo Lira. He was asked about the losses in the conflict, Russian losses and Ukraine losses. And this is an interesting statement as well from Putin. He said, according to our estimates, the Ukraine army loses about 50,000 people every month, Putin said in response to a question, adding that the ratio of sanitary and irrecoverable casualties was about 50-50. While not specifying the number of Russian casualties, Putin said the number of irrecoverable losses was at least 5 times less than those incurred by Kiev's forces. There are currently 1,348 Russian servicemen held in Ukraine as prisoners of war, while 6,465 Ukrainian servicemen are in Russian captivity, the president revealed. Ukraine is capable of mobilizing about 30,000 troops a month, and there aren't very many volunteers, Putin explained. It doesn't solve the problem, the Russian leader said. All of the people they are able to mobilize go to replace the battlefield losses. And then Putin also talked about the open secret in Kiev that they're going to start to mobilize 18-year-olds. He said that's the open secret that's being talked about in the Ukraine government. So an interesting revelation from Putin, the numbers of prisoners being held, which make the point that Russia's losses are 5 times less than Ukraine's losses. Which to me confirm the losses estimated by MediaZone and the BBC. I've talked about the website that is a cooperation between the BBC and MediaZona. MediaZona is the media company run by Pussy Riot. the ex-bandmates of Pussy Riot and some other guys. Very anti-Putin, very anti-Russian. But together with the BBC, they track Russian losses. And they have that number at around 50, I believe 57, 58,000, last I checked. And it's very detailed. They have the weekly and monthly losses, and they try to track everything as accurately as possible. And so that would mean if the number is 50,000, 50 to 60,000, Ukraine losses are 5 times more. I think that makes sense. If you go by the Ukraine numbers and the UK Defense Ministry numbers, which has it at what? 300,000 Russian losses? Then Ukraine's losses are 5 times more. And everything lines up, right? Because Russia has a 5 to 10 to 1 advantage in artillery, in weapons, in the prisoners being held. It's a 5 times difference. So logically, the casualties, the losses, would also be a 5 times difference. Maybe a 10 times difference. I don't know, but Putin here says 5 times difference. So that was an interesting comment. Putin was asked about Russia attacking NATO. He said, look, someone has imagined that Russia wants to attack NATO. Have you gone completely insane? Are you as thick as this table? Who came up with this nonsense, this bullshit, Putin said. The Russian president suggested that the BS was in the service of deceiving the people at home in the West, urging them to arm themselves and send more weapons to Ukraine. Why is this being done, really? To maintain their own position of greatness. That's why. There's nothing to these scary stories intended for the townsfolk in Germany and France and elsewhere in Europe, Putin explained. In Ukraine, we're just protecting ourselves. Yeah, keep the Ukraine grift going. That's why you come up with these scary stories. Keep the money flowing to NATO. Keep the money flowing to the MIC. And keep Project Ukraine going. Keep Ukraine fighting in the hopes that maybe something will happen on the front lines, which will put Europe, which will put the collective West in a position where they have some sort of leverage over Russia and they can negotiate, and it doesn't look like it's an outright defeat for the collective West, for the United States, for the neocons, and for NATO. That's what they're hoping for, and to get this conflict to the elections in November 2024. And finally, Putin was asked about Alinsky's legitimacy as president of Ukraine, and he said, quote, it says that Alinsky's powers are transferred to the parliament and that presidential elections are not held as long as the martial law is in force, but it does not say that presidential powers should be extended. It does not say so. It means no, the Russian leader says. Zelensky's move to extend his own presidential term indefinitely seems to be in breach of Article 109 of Ukraine's criminal court, which says that this should be treated as seizure of power, Putin argued. The Russian president went on to suggest that Ukraine's Western backers were keeping Alinsky in power to push through and bear full blame for the upcoming unpopular decisions, such as possibly lowering the military draft eligibility age to 18. Yeah, absolutely. Keep Alinsky in power. Have him continue to fight this war, a war that in Ukraine is becoming very unpopular. My sense is that Ukrainian citizens now understand that they are losing this war and losing this war badly, but you got to keep Alinsky in power as president because he will continue to fight this unpopular war. Eventually, he will recruit 18-year-olds, which will be a very unpopular decision. But if everything collapses, you can throw Alinsky under the bus. That's what Putin is saying. That's why you keep him in there. Anyway, let's move on now, and from Fico to Putin, let's now go to Biden, to Professor Biden. So yesterday I talked about the Time magazine interview of Professor Biden, and Jake Tapper from CNN, he interviewed the Time magazine reporter who interviewed Biden, and Jake Tapper asked about Biden's mental acuity, his state of mind. How is Biden doing up there? Tapper asked. And the Time magazine reporter couldn't really answer. He couldn't really answer. He was very vague in his response to Tapper. He basically said, take a look at the interview, take a look at the transcript, and that'll give you an indication as to Biden's mental state, his mental capacities. Anyway, that was the Time magazine reporter's answer to CNN. And the Wall Street Journal, they put out an article yesterday with the title, "Behind Closed Doors, Biden Shows Signs of Slipping." Twitter X post from Edward Snowden, front page of the Wall Street Journal, confirming as politely as possible that Biden's apparent decline is real and serious. Let me read you just the first paragraph from this Wall Street Journal article, which the Wall Street Journal says was conducted over many months. They were allowed access to sit into many meetings with Biden and his staff and various government officials, meetings about Project Ukraine, meetings about, I believe they said, border security and other issues. They were allowed to sit in and take a look at Biden and see how Biden is doing. And they interviewed, I believe the Wall Street Journal said, 45 officials, Democrats, Republicans, Biden staff. And let me read you just the first paragraph of this article. When President Biden met with congressional leaders in the West Wing in January to negotiate a Ukraine funding deal, he spoke so softly at times that some participants struggled to hear him, according to 5 people familiar with the meeting. He read from notes to make obvious points, paused for extended periods, and sometimes closed his eyes for so long that some in the room wondered whether he had tuned out. And that's pretty much how this whole article goes. It talks about how Biden forgets things during meetings, how he mixes up names of people, how he sometimes talks very, very low, so low that people in the room can't hear what he's saying, and that he sometimes just tunes out. Sometimes it looks like he's even falling asleep, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, some people came to Biden's defense. Let me read you what Morning Joe Scarborough, said in response to this Wall Street Journal article defending Biden. Quote, "I've spent time with both of those guys privately, spent time with Biden and Trump privately. I've spent time with every House Speaker over the past 30 years. And Joe Biden, it's just not close," said Joe Scarborough from MSNBC Morning Joe. If you want to talk about international affairs, if you want to talk about how to get bipartisan legislation, Joe Biden is light years ahead of all of them. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. And F you if you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. I can handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. You're damn right I ordered that code red. Anyway, that's MSNBC, Morning Joe, Scarborough, who hosts the show with Mika Brzezinski. Biden is as sharp as ever. He is as sharp as ever, according to Morning Joe. 45 people interviewed by the Wall Street Journal over many months beg to differ. But hey, what do they know? What do they know? So that is the Wall Street Journal article on Biden. The big question that I have, I think the important thing to ask with regards to this WSJ article is why. Why did they publish an article detailing Biden's mental cognitive decline? Why? Why now? Why are they running with this story? That is the question that all of us should be asking. Anyway, from President Biden, we go to his son, Hunter Biden. And Hunter Biden has this gun case that is taking place right now in court. This is the case that, if I'm not mistaken, that Biden lied on the form to purchase a firearm about whether he was taking any drugs or high or stuff like that. And he said he wasn't taking any drugs, that he wasn't high, and he lied on the form, and then he got a gun, and then he disposed of the gun in a trash bin or something like that anyway. And he was high on crack and marijuana and all kinds of substances. So now he is in court. And from what I understand, this is a slam dunk case. That if everything is on the up and fair, then Hunter Biden will be found guilty. And he could face 25 years in prison, but that's not going to happen. We all know that these types of things don't happen to the Biden family and to the son of President Biden. But that's the case that he is now in court fighting, litigating. And the big news with this story, what I think is the really big news, is that yesterday the Biden laptop was introduced as evidence. The laptop from hell. It was introduced as evidence in this case. You know, the laptop that they told us was Russian disinformation. That laptop. Yep, 100% confirmed, real, 100% introduced into a court of law. 51 Intel specialists, former Intel specialists, said that this laptop had the earmarks of being Russian disinformation. And Biden repeated that during a debate with Trump. He said that the Biden laptop was disinformation, Russian disinformation. How dare you, Trump, bring this up during a debate? Remember that? Remember when Trump was interviewed by, I believe, Leslie Stahl, is it, of 60 Minutes? And she got upset that Trump was talking about the Hunter Biden laptop. She said, that's not true. 51 Intel officials said it was Russian disinformation. Remember that? And remember how big tech was canceling anybody, including, I believe, the New York Post, wasn't it? Anybody that said this laptop was legit. Remember that? Well, but now this laptop has been presented into a court of law, and it is 100% legit. That is the big news, because this laptop documents all of Hunter's escapades. Let's just call it that. To make the point that Hunter was indeed an addict when he purchased this firearm. That's my understanding of what's going on in this case. Maybe I'm I've got it a little bit wrong, but that's pretty much the gist of what is happening here. So I saw an interview on Fox News, Brett Baer, and one of the Intel or former Intel officials that signed this letter saying this had the earmarks of Russian disinformation. And that's the key. That is the key. This Intel official was asked by Brett Baer if he still backs up this letter that he signed. And the guy said, absolutely. I stand by it, he said, this former Intel official. And Brett Baer was like a Fox News, credit to Brett Baer. I give him credit. He did a good job in this interview. He's like, how? How can you still stand by this when we now know this whole thing was, this whole 51 Russian disinformation thing was fake and this laptop is real. It's legit. And this Intel official said, no, Brett, no. You're failing to understand the nuance. You see, everybody? It's all about the nuance. And this official said it had the earmarks. The laptop had the earmarks of Russian disinformation. And he said, that's absolutely true. It had the earmarks of Russian disinformation. We never said it was 100% Russian disinformation. We just said that it's something that looks like could have come from Russia, given our experience as Intel officials, as intelligence experts. And he stood by that claim.
Very quickly.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
This is where.
Understanding how you characterize it, but he characterized it differently and used it in a debate just days before an election.
Yeah, I'll let President Biden speak for himself. He's capable of doing that. What I'll do is say that it has all the classic earmarks of a Russian campaign in the way it was disseminated and propagated through media.
Do you regret signing on to the letter?
Oh, absolutely not, because those words are still true.
It had the classic earmarks, but it wasn't true.
What is not true?
That it was Russian disinformation.
That's not what we said in the letter. Read the actual letter, and we said we do not know if this is Russian disinformation.
It has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation.
Exactly. The difference between an information campaign and a disinformation campaign and a misinformation campaign, it's not my fault if people don't look up definitions.
So let's do some more stories, very quick stories, and then we'll get to a clown world. Turkey. The foreign minister said that they want to enter BRICS. He basically said that in the BRICS summit, the next big BRICS summit, which is going to take place, I believe, in October in Kazan, hosted by the Russian Federation, he said that Turkey will apply to enter BRICS. Basically, the foreign minister said that Turkey is sick and tired of waiting to enter the European Union. It's been something like 30 or 40 years. They're tired of trying to enter the European Union. Ukraine and Moldova, they've been given the green light to enter the European Union, but Turkey, nope, nope. And he's like, forget it. BRICS is the way to go, and that's a smart decision. That's a very smart decision. Why enter a sinking ship when you can enter a ship that's rising, that's going places? What else? The EU said that, there's been a report from a German publication, I believe it's called T-Online, which is saying that the EU is putting together a surveillance program to monitor citizens in the European Union, like to really surveil them and monitor them. And they're putting this program, this legislation together, and basically what it's going to do is that it's going to allow the EU to access any content online of any EU citizen. Web apps, big tech companies, they have to provide a backdoor to the European Union to enter their applications and to go into any accounts that they want to go into. This includes encrypted messaging apps, Telegram, WhatsApp, anything. The EU wants to be able to enter any of the apps through a backdoor and to see what people are saying and to monitor the conversations. And this also includes the Internet of Things. Anywhere where there is internet access or internet connectivity, the EU is pushing to have a backdoor to enter that application or that hardware and to be able to surveil citizens. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. Yeah, but it's Russia. That's the totalitarian, authoritarian regime. Yeah, it's Russia. It's China. No, it's the European Union. Anyway, let's do a clown world, and this clown world is Vovan and Lexus. They prank called Klaus Schwab. How am I doing on time? All right, I'm doing all right. Yeah, they prank called Klaus Schwab. They pretended to be, one second, a French author and government advisor and globalist. I'm not familiar with this guy, but they pretended to be globalist and economist, French globalist economist Jacques Attali. That's who they pretended to be as they called up Klaus Schwab. And the topic of discussion was the legacy of Henry Kissinger. So this guy, Vovan and Lexus, they pretend to be this economist / globalist, Jacques Attali, and he calls up Klaus Schwab so they can talk about Henry Kissinger's legacy. And, you know, to be honest, I'll read you what some of the things that Klaus Schwab said. To be honest, Klaus Schwab didn't say anything that controversial. I don't think so. I don't think he said anything that we don't already know. Let me put it that way. But let me read it to you. Let me read you what Klaus Schwab said. The most likely outcome for Ukraine, when he was asked about Project Ukraine, he said, Klaus Schwab said, the most likely solution could be a solution between the two Koreas that is not a formalized mutual recognition, but a kind of freezing of hostilities. Not controversial. We already know that they would like to get some sort of a Korea conflict freeze. Schwab believes that the moment for negotiations has not yet come because Ukrainians cannot give up without losing their political authority. Therefore, we have to wait until something happens that really creates a kind of need for discussion. Yeah, I think that's the plan, kind of the plan that Europe and the collective West has. Keep on fighting and maybe something will happen, some sort of change in the dynamics on the ground, some sort of Ukraine counteroffensive or counterattack or victory or something, or maybe something inside of Russia. Something happens that gives us some leverage and we can save face. We can then negotiate because we get a victory somewhere, somehow, somewhere we get some sort of W, and we can then negotiate and we save face, and we can market the negotiation as a victory, and we didn't lose. So yeah, that's absolutely what Europe, the U.S., and the collective West is hoping for. And Schwab spoke about meeting Putin. He didn't say anything interesting there. He basically said that Putin told him that Russia wants to work with Europe, but Russia is not. It's not going to be like a European vassal. It's not going to be a part of Europe in the sense of being a subordinate to Europe. It's its own country with its own identity and its own culture. And yeah, that sounds pretty much like something Putin would say. And probably the most interesting thing that Klaus Schwab said was connected to Alinsky. The president of the WEF does not think too highly of Alinsky, considering it necessary to lead him by the nose, promising unrealistic membership in the EU and NATO. Europe plays an important role in influencing him. We need to use Alinsky and tell him that he will get what he wants only if he supports our democratic principles, Schwab admitted. We're using Alinsky, exactly. Yeah, in the interview, you could tell that Schwab doesn't think Alinsky is too bright. But let's use him, because if we promise him things, he'll do as we order him. He's a good puppet, is basically what Schwab said. And Schwab also talked about Nord Stream. He basically took the position that Ukraine probably did something to Nord Stream in order to prevent Germany from working with Russia. So that's Klaus Schwab. He believes Ukraine and Gilligan were behind the Nord Stream sabotage. Anyway, that is the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, and Rockfin. And go to the Duran shop. Pick up some football shirts, Football 24. You will find the link in the description box down below, or pick up a reverse gear shirt as well. Take care.